Hey, what's going on YouTube on this rainy Saturday morning right now? And I just wanted to do another video called Is Star Trek Discovery a Section 31 Story? And the reason I wanted to do this is because as soon as someone brought up this theory to me, this idea that Lorca and Burnham and the Discovery were actually Section 31, it actually made me enjoy the story a lot more than I did originally, because I was very skeptical, and still am very skeptical of some of the aspects of this new show. So I wanted to start off with the reasons why I do think it is, and this is collected from my own personal observations and other people's observations as well that I've witnessed on YouTube. So it's not all due to me, but some of these are my own personal things that I've noticed. So starting off, the first thing that I really noticed, which was odd and out of place, unless it was Section 31, would be the black uniforms noticed when the prisoners boarded the ship, which aren't like Starfleet uniforms and they're not regular issue. All other Section 31 members we have seen so far across various Star Trek universes have also dressed in all black. So just like the thumbnail that I presented, most of the Section 31 members we've seen wear all black uniforms, so that's interesting. And they had the characters actually note it in the story, so it's not just something that was like done in passing. Even the characters themselves noticed that it was odd, and they mentioned that it's not very scientific. I don't know what that means, but I guess that just looks very sinister, right? Another really good reason would be the USS Discovery's ship registration is NCC 01031, which obviously is 31. It's very strange, and it could be obvious, or it could be something that they're doing to just make people like us that are interested in canon just completely throw us off the trail of what's really happening and make us focus on other stuff, which is also possible. They've done that before with this show. The kidnapping, the part where Michael Burnham her shuttle is, the prisoner shuttle that she's on is redirected and taken by Discovery, is very reminiscent of how Section 31 brought Dr. Julian Bashir from Deep Space Nine in for an interview with the group and how they recruited people in the past. The tactics of using an unauthorized prisoner transfer is very reminiscent of the way Sloan recruited Bashir. So yeah, it's very reminiscent. It's almost exactly the same kind of methods. So I thought that was very interesting. The Discovery is also carrying out dozens of other experiments possessing advanced technology far beyond their era. So that could be an explanation that not only are they a top secret ship, but they also are messing around with things that they shouldn't really have. But someone else noted that I thought it was kind of weird too, that a lot of the technology they have in Discovery, even to this day, isn't even in Voyager, which doesn't make any sense because it's hundreds of years later. So they should have that technology if they had it. It doesn't make any sense still, and I still think that their disregard for canon is really bad for the story and bad for Star Trek. But I really hope that Section 31 can solve a lot of these problems. So Burnham accuses Lorca of experimenting with biological weapons similar to the operating methods of Section 31, which created a disease that eventually kills a lot of changelings and ends up bringing a much more speedy end to the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine. So it wouldn't be outside of what they normally do and what they've been shown to do. So that would make sense. Even though Lorca says it's the spore drive, it's not the biological weapon. So that was because we've seen more of it. We know that's not the case. The experiments require special permission to access, which is odd for a Starfleet vessel, but wouldn't be out of place on a top secret ship or a Section 31 ship. They ignore the Prime directives along with the Federation rules, and with few to no consequences until recently when the female admiral wanted to take Lorca off the ship for psych evaluations. Lorca commutes the life sentence of Michael Burnham, and that's a big deal since they make a point of telling us that she's the first mutineer aboard a Starfleet vessel, and everyone makes a big deal of like avoiding her or acting differently around her. Oh, there's bunnies running around my feet right now. So Section 31 is in Enterprise and Deep Space Nine and in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie universe, so it wouldn't be out of place for them to put it into this one because they've even made it as recently as the J.J. Abrams one part of it. So Section 31 also usually wears all black, and in the pictures of the uniforms with the black insignia, they seem to be also wearing what looks like body armor as well, and I thought that was pretty interesting because Starfleet usually doesn't wear body armor, they just wear like uniforms. Strekyards thinks that this could be some kind of proto-Section 31 group trying to get a head start, so that's one of the people that made me interested in this particular topic. It's more likely that the Kelvin timeline, considering all the aesthetics and the fact that events in history don't go together at all in Section 31 unless it's the Kelvin timeline really well. So a lot of this stuff wouldn't make sense unless it was. And like I said, Section 31 is in both Prime and Kelvin timeline, so it would make a lot of sense. Captain Lorca's acting reminds me of Sloan from Deep Space Nine, who was one of the central Section 31 members that we actually meet and interact with a lot of the time. Jason Isaacs actually has a British accent in real life, and when he's being himself, he isn't at all like the character that Lorca is. So, but in the show, they made him have almost exactly the same voice and way of speaking as Sloan does, talking about people's files and being condescending towards them, and his sarcasm. Like, all of these things are exactly the same. Michael Burnham would also be a perfect fit for Section 31. Dr. Bashir and Michael Burnham, who was the other person who was recruited by them, but he said no and she said yes. They're also very similar in a lot of ways. They both possess superior intelligence and skills compared to normal humans, because Bashir was genetically augmented to have superior intelligence as a child, and even though that went against all the anti-eugenics laws that they were created in the Star Trek universe due to Khan and his ilk trying to take control. So Burnham was trained as a Vulcan, and they raised her because her parents were killed in a Klingon attack on the Vulcan Learning Center. Not to mention the mutiny that Burnham pulled. They're both outcasts in these ways, and they are highly skilled, which makes them obvious choices for Section 31, who wants to pick some of the most skilled operatives and killers to join their ranks and that are qualified. So they need scientists and they need people like Burnham. So they need people that are they fit exactly into the mold of what they're supposed to be. So I've seen a lot of people listing all of these particular ideas, which are, some of them are ones that I've copied, some of them are mine, and I think that these all make a lot of sense as to why that would be the case. Now I'm going to state the reasons why Discovery isn't Section 31. Well, they haven't mentioned anything about it. They've made no references to Section 31 other than the registry. They really, and the black uniforms, there really isn't much else to go on. Discovery isn't exactly a secret. They don't seem to have a military crew. They have mostly scientists and non-combat people, aside from the black uniforms. It's almost too perfect, and it makes so much sense that I doubt that the producers would do it, because it's so canon and everything they do is pretty much in order to rewrite everything and reimagine everything in the Star Trek universe. So it would be out of character for them to suddenly care about keeping Star Trek in good shape and using elements from it. So I thought that would be kind of weird. But it's also good because I would really want this to be true. Lorca isn't exactly a Sloan type of operator so far in a lot of the ways that he acts. Maybe in the ways that he is when he's speaking to people, he acts like Sloan. But when he's the way he's personally motivated doesn't make me think that he's him. He seems to be more brash and military-minded, not like a spy necessarily, although there are some indications. He wants to personally fight and do battle drills, which makes me think that his experience with the Klingons has made him hate them with a fiery passion. I think based on what we've seen, he's a man on a mission to take revenge on the Klingons for whatever happened to his ship, and for which he had to self-destruct it, which he claims he did in order to save his own crew from being tortured and humiliated on Kronos. So I think that weighs very heavily on his character, apparently, because it says that he has this big hatred for Klingons, and he really does seem like he wants to bring an end to the war, and he's very focused on that. The same way that Sloan was very focused on the Dominion War and bringing an end to it, and the way that they infected the Changelings would be very similar to the way that the Klingons were supposedly affected with a virus or something like that, which affected the way they looked physiologically. So in conclusion, if Discovery is actually a story of Section 31, that would be great, and it would increase how much I enjoy the show, and I'm sure other real Star Trek fans and Legacy fans who actually know what Section 31 is, like I'm assuming a lot of people don't know what it is, would enjoy the show and also make a lot more sense why they're breaking so many rules in Starfleet, why canon is being ignored, and to some of the degree why various codes of conduct are being ignored, i.e. mutiny, intercrew conflict, etc., which you usually don't see taking place in this show. So I thought it was very interesting that my mother, who's introduced me to Star Trek, who's watched the show for, multiple decades, she doesn't know what Section 31 is. So I don't think that I don't think that is a very well-known part of Star Trek at all. So there are lots of people that are, I wouldn't say bigger fans than me, but they've spent more time watching it, and they are very aware of this stuff too, and they have no idea about this. So this isn't actually a very well-known topic at all. Probably because most people didn't watch Deep Space Nine or Enterprise. that was me, because I watched all of those and enjoyed them. Obviously Deep Space Nine a lot more though. After seeing all these theories, I can say that I was still very skeptical about this new Star Trek project, being in the mindset that Discovery is actually Section 31 made me enjoy the show a lot more. So I watched the last episode with Sarek and the whole mind meld across the thing. Like, I really didn't like a lot of those elements, which I'll do another video on. I really, really didn't like some of them. But I will say it actually did increase my enjoyment of the show exponentially. So There are some things I think would be very helpful if they added them into the show. For example, the Section 31 connection, which essentially makes like a CIA version of Star Trek, and that's really interesting. You know, spies and, you know, extracurricular activities outside of the purview of Federation laws and the Prime Directive really makes sense because they can go further than they would be able to if they were doing a normal show where they followed the rules and all the people were good. It really adds more depth to it, and I really hope that they do have Section 31 play a large role in the future. So I want to know what everyone else thinks. I wonder if people actually know what Section 31 is. I've seen a couple of videos on it, but I'm assuming that those are more of the like really nerdy in-depth analysis. I haven't seen a lot of like normal fans talk about it. I'm sure they wouldn't even recognize it. They'd just be like, oh, it's just a black uniform, whatever. But to all of us to know, we definitely want this to be the case. And I know I've seen a lot of people agree with me and say, yeah, it definitely would increase our enjoyment of the show. So for all intents and purposes, I would really hope that this show takes the I know this is not going to happen because most of the time they don't care what the fans think anymore, but it would really make all of us who were really critical of the lack of adherence to the canon and a respect for the canon, I think it would make us feel a lot better because we'd be like, oh, well, now it all makes sense. Now, instead of it being a traditional show which has completely gone off the rails, it could be actually on a completely different track that we weren't aware of or we weren't thinking about at the beginning. So I hope that makes people either look into it or be more skeptical or less skeptical depending on how much you enjoy a clandestine Black Ops version of Star Trek being portrayed to us instead of the regular space exploration version, which we haven't actually done a lot of space exploration in the show yet. So I'd be interested to see how that works. So anyways, have a good day. I'm glad if you made it to this far through the video, I'm glad you made it here, and thank you very much. See you later.